Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Alpha Koncepts Podcast, where we talk about everything going on in the gun culture, from training, gear, and gun rights advocacy. Hi, I'm your host, Thomas Krall, and I'll be with you on this adventure that we're going on together. And today I have Erik Tweedt on the phone with me, and we're going to talk about Erik's training classes, including some of his firearm training classes, as well as some of the medical training that he offers to the general public. Erik Tweedt, thank you very much for being here with me.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me about yourself. Tell our listeners who you are.
So I run Archetype of the Gun in the Chicagoland area. I do firearms and medical training. I am a retired paramedic from the city of Chicago. I've been a paramedic for the past 20 years, and I've done everything in that aspect. Firearms training, I'm a NRA instructor, range master instructor. I'm one of 20 handgun combatives instructors under Dave Spalding. And we do everything from private sessions for medical and firearms for beginners, all the way through what some would consider advanced skills, which I just consider a mastery of the essentials.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think that people get hung up on what advanced skills are, and it really is just like you said, mastering the essentials, mastering the fundamentals, just learning how to properly apply them efficiently and subconsciously.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I never had to think about starting an IV in the field. I just knew what to do.
Right. You had proper training, you had practice, and then at some point you became unconsciously competent. You didn't need to think about, like, when you're driving a car, you don't have to think, okay, I'm going to slow down, I'm going to look to my right, I'm going to put on the signal, I'm going to slowly merge over. That all just happens at a certain point, in our traffic safety class that we might take when we're 15, 16 years old. We have to think about those steps, but sometime, after a few months of driving, it's just completely 100% natural, and that's why we get training. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Training allows us to develop consistent and efficient skills so that we can focus on the more important tasks. Constantly reevaluating the situation. Do I need to apply force? Do I need to apply more pressure to the tourniquet? Has the bleeding stopped? I don't need to think about how I put the tourniquet on because I know how to do that. But I need to, okay, now that that's done, I can focus on the rest of the patient, right? Do I need to apply more lead to hold this guy down? Right? We don't want to be overzealous in our use of any of our skills.
So let me ask you this. I'm not a doctor. I don't want to be a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a paramedic. I don't want to be any of those things. But I still do think that it's important that we get some baseline of medical first aid type training. Why do you think it's important? I know you do, because you're teaching people these life-saving skills. Why do you think that it's important?
Absolutely. So, everybody likes to train the gun stuff because, it's fun, it's sexy, it looks good on social media. But if you start asking people that come to classes, or just people that you talk with on a daily basis, how many of them have ever had to use their gun in self-defense, very infrequently does somebody raise their hand. And generally, I'll immediately follow up that question with, well, how many times have you seen a bad car accident? How many times have you seen somebody injure themselves severely in the kitchen, right? How many people have seen somebody have a heart attack or choking? So you're much more likely to use your medical skills throughout your daily life than you ever are your firearm skills. It's not that firearm skills aren't important. We need to be well-rounded in our abilities.
And let's look at it like this. The more you train, I heard someone say it once, how did he put it? I'm going to paraphrase, but basically they said, every time you train with your firearm, it's one step closer to shooting yourself or somebody else negligently. And that is obviously a paraphrase. They said it quite diplomatically, but it rings true. The more you train, it's like the more you drive. The more you drive, the more likely you are to be in a car accident. That's why people who drive 12,000 miles a year have a lower insurance rate than those who drive 30,000 miles a year.
Yep.
And firearm training is no different. So if you're going to be serious about your firearm training, then you have to accept that risk, because of course everything with a firearm is a balance of the risk. We want to make sure what we're doing is as least risky as possible, but there's always that risk there. And we can control our actions, but we can't control the actions of the person next to us. And if they, were to shoot themselves in the leg or shoot the person next to them, it would behoove us to be able to care for that person, especially if you're an instructor like we are.
Absolutely.
You have that skill that I don't have, and you've got that practice and that repetition and that unconscious ability and the stress inoculation that I don't have, but I can still provide a very basic level of first aid, emergency care, maybe applying a tourniquet, whatever the case may be, until the real professionals get there. And I think that not just instructors, not just range safety officers, but anyone who takes their firearm training seriously should also take at least a very basic level of medical training seriously as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I do agree. The more you're around guns, the more likely you're going to experience some sort of gunshot wound. I mean, these things are mechanical objects. They can and do fail. There's no such thing as a safe gun. There's a reason why we have the 4 safety rules and we respect the firearm. So we absolutely are at a higher risk because we're around them all the time. I tell this to people in my entry level gun classes all the time. So you're here because you think you may have to use a firearm to defend yourself or your loved ones, to save your own life. Do you think that that's a one-way street? No. If there's a chance that you're going to use your gun, there's probably bullets coming at you or your loved ones, or a knife or other significant threat of greater grave bodily harm, right? It would be absolutely tragic to survive the deadly encounter and then die bleeding on the street afterwards. Actually, that just happened in the Chicagoland area about a week or two ago, I think. At least that's when I read about it. Concealed carry holder at a party in Chicago was at a house party, and somebody else at the house party started shooting wildly into the crowd. He returned fire, killed the active shooter. He himself was mortally wounded, died right there.
I mean, I tell people in my classes that a concealed carry license is not an invincibility shield. It's not a Superman cape. It gives you allows you one of the best methods of fighting back, but it doesn't stop you from getting hurt.
Nope.
And I don't think that enough people understand and realize that there is that risk there, that you can still get hurt. And yes, I'm familiar with the story that you just cited in the city of Chicago. It's very unfortunate. Silver lining to the cloud is he literally didn't stop, but he reduced the casualties in what was a mass shooting, because if I remember correctly, the shooter shot 4 or 5 people, and I think maybe 1 or 2 of them actually did die besides the concealed carry licensee. But he was able to save lives, just not his own. And maybe if he had some basic medical experience, he could have. I'm not saying he could have. I'm saying maybe.
Well, yeah.
I wasn't there. I didn't see the severity of the injuries, whatever the case may be. But if someone there, maybe even not even himself, but if someone there just knew, again, how to apply a tourniquet, or, how to pack a wound, or whatever the situation may have. I mean, who knows? Maybe he got hit in the head and it was a foregone conclusion.
Yep.
But possibly someone could have maybe saved his life, or he could have saved his own life. And again, it's hard, we don't have the details, but these situations do occur frequently, especially in the violent city of Chicago. And he's not the first, and he won't be the last person with a concealed carry license who, was able to defend himself, but ultimately, passed in the end. And that's why we got to take our medical training seriously. And like I said, get a baseline. So what type of, of course, again, you offer the firearm training classes, and we'll definitely talk about that. But what type of medical training classes are you offering to the general public?
So the primary classes that I offer for the general public, we do American Heart Association CPR, American Heart Association First Aid, and we do Stop the Bleed. And then we also do TECC, Traumatic Emergency Casualty Care, which is tourniquets, wound packing, airway shock, chest seals, all of that.
And what type of demographic do you see attending these classes?
just like firearms training in Chicago, especially now, we're getting a very diverse population. I get people in classes who are there for the medical who have no interest in firearms. I get law enforcement, responsibly armed citizens, medical professionals. Part of my previous life was being an EMS educator, so I'm able to provide continuing education for those medical professionals and continuing education for law enforcement on medical aspects for that. So I get a wide range of students from my medical classes.
And I was looking for that answer about the how diverse it is. I mean, I think people get stereotype kind of branded into their brain, and they feel like, I don't meet that stereotype. I don't fit that criteria. So maybe, I don't want to take this training class because I'll feel uncomfortable. But like you said, it's very diverse. There's people from literally all walks of life. And I'm assuming, as far as race, colors, genders, it just is a slice of the pie, and it runs the gambit of the entire, regional culture.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's, medical skills and being self-reliant is not gender, race, nationality specific. It's something that everyone needs. You just need to get them to realize they need it.
We all bleed the same, right?
Yep. Same, Second Amendment's for everybody.
Absolutely.
So are medical skills.
So let me ask you this. Let's say, obviously every single wound is different. It's like you play the what if game, you change a small scenario and the entire scenario changes, right? Because if I said you got shot in the leg, there's a big difference between getting shot on the inside and the outside of the leg, where the inside has the femoral artery and the outside is relatively, if you're going to get shot in your leg, that's probably the place to get shot. But you know what? Assuming an artery is not hit, what's the likelihood that someone will actually survive a gunshot wound, assuming that they get treatment within a reasonable amount of time?
Actually, here in the Chicagoland area, you do stand a very high likelihood of surviving handgun wounds because, unfortunately, the men and women of the Chicago Fire Department are very, very practiced at treating those types of traumatic injuries. We have a very good success rate, and it is not uncommon for somebody to get shot a bunch of times, have bullet holes all over their body, and not hit anything important and be out of the hospital in a day or two.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of these rappers brag about how many times they got shot. And Hey Jackass, which is one of my favorite websites, heyjackass.com, does an excellent job tracking the violence statistics in the city of Chicago. And I think it's something like an 86% survival rate when shot by, just again, a broad spectrum. They don't, they track where you're getting shot, and I think they have a meter like hitting the buttorama meter or something like that.
Yep.
But it's like an 86% survival rate in the city of Chicago, and it's something like 55 or 60% survival when it's an officer involved shooting, which speaks to the level of training, right?
Yep.
Obviously, the officers should, not all do, but officers should have a higher level of training than the average civilian. And we know most of the people doing the shooting is not people with concealed carry licenses, but it's, the typical gangbangers. So they have zero training whatsoever. So there speaks volumes to training and shot placement, but like you said, the EMS, the fire department, in the emergency rooms, they've got a lot of practice treating these gunshot wounds, and we've got a lot of statistics. And if you can get a tourniquet or pack a wound or whatever the case may be, you've got a really, really good chance of survival. And I'm sure there's other areas of the country where maybe their statistics aren't quite as good because they don't have that level of practice, which is probably a good thing. But I'm sure that their statistics are not, far behind because we're sharing this information. And I know that, correct me if I'm wrong, right, that I've heard numerous times that combat medics will train with the Chicago Fire Department and do ride-alongs to get them combat ready before they actually deploy overseas to the sandbox to fight the terrorists.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, we train military personnel in the city of Chicago for ride-alongs on a regular basis. At least when I was on the department, we did. I'm fairly certain they still do. I know paramedics around the nation, and I know plenty of paramedics who have never treated a gunshot wound. They may only get a handful in a career, whereas in the city of Chicago, working 24 on, 72 hours off, if you're not doing an overtime day or a forced rehire, you're working 2 days a week. And it was nothing for me to treat anywhere from 4 to 10 gunshot victims weekly. It was absolutely nothing, and that's year round, so.
Yeah, I mean, we get what are we at? 13. I can check the stats, but off the top of my head, like 1,300 shooting victims and something like 500 plus deaths. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of practice.
I could have sworn we were getting ready to hit the 3,000 mark for shootings.
Well, let me check. You're probably right, because as I was saying the word 1,300, it was like, no, that's not right. Yeah, you're right. We're 2,500 and 532 dead. So 2,589 shot and wounded. Oh, that's wounded. So what's this? They're adding the two together. According to Hey Jackass, 3,121 total shot.
There we go.
And 532 were killed. So you can do the math and extrapolate right there.
Yep. So yeah, it's something we do on a regular basis. That a lot of places just don't get that experience level, and it's obviously we don't like having that experience level, but it's nice to be able to call on it when needed.
Absolutely. In a less violent atmosphere when it's an accident and not something intentional. Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to have those skills in your back pocket. So you said you teach, was it TECC is tech? Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's the more advanced of the classes, correct?
Yes, that's for the civilian firearms training. Civilian medical training. That's about as advanced as we get or offer. I offer more advanced classes for law enforcement and EMS professionals that require those higher skill levels. But we're getting into a lot of information in those 8-hour and 16-hour classes that the average, armed civilian or prepared citizen will never need. So the 4-hour active bystander is what we teach, and we get into patient assessment and shock and airway management. Some of the things that, well, actually, it expands upon everything that Stop the Bleed does, but Stop the Bleed only covers tourniquets and wound packing. So, we get chest seals, airway management, full patient assessments, all of it.
And chest seals and tourniquets and all these things are readily available that there's no reason. They're not even that expensive. There's no reason why you can just throw them in a first aid kit and have them with you. I've got one in my range kit. I've got, in my car. It's just no excuse not to have these very cheap and effective life-saving devices. What are the prerequisites for someone to take the TECC class?
Show up and be willing.
There you go. Have a good attitude, ready to learn, right?
Yep. We teach the active bystander classes as is, we treat it as if the students coming in have absolutely no medical experience whatsoever. This is going to be one of their first classes they could take. Now, generally, we do get a lot of repeat people who, they get their whistle wet with a Stop the Bleed class, and then they realize that they should probably know more, and they get to come back and do those other things. But we teach the classes if you're coming in with no experience.
What is your favorite tourniquet?
The one that I carry on me on a daily basis is going to be the TechMed Solutions Softy Wide Gen 4. However, it's not my favorite tourniquet for the average person. I'd have to say the Cat Gen 7.
That's what I have. I was going to ask you what your thoughts about that. Was it North American?
North American Rescue.
That's it, Rescue. I was going to say North American Arms, but I knew it's definitely not. Yeah, that's what I have. So I was going to ask your opinion on that. So looks like I got the right one.
No, the Cat Gen 7 is with less effort and less practice, it is easier to get first time successful application of that tourniquet. Whereas with the Soft T, it requires a little bit of extra practice on your part to become proficient with it. They're both incredibly effective, as are any of the other COTCC recommended, approved tourniquets are. They all work, but they all have their pros and cons, But the Cat Gen 7 is readily available as long as you're buying from an authorized distributor for
Excellent point.
Generally $30, because you don't want to get a knockoff. And then it's also the easiest to apply with the least effort.
Because you can go on Amazon and get the knockoffs for $15, $17. In fact, the very, very first one I ever bought was. And then I was like looking at it and I'm like, this just does not, feel quality.
Yeah.
I heard this was a great product. This doesn't feel like a great product. I started doing the research and realized that no, the one I actually physically have in my hands isn't a great product because it's a knockoff. You've got to get the genuine one.
Yeah, absolutely. The Cat tourniquet is widely copied, and there's tons of fakes out there. Unless you're doing a bulk order through a distributor to get a better price, if you're paying less than between $25 and $30, you're getting taken.
You're saying if you're paying less than 25, or if you're paying between 25 and 30?
No, if you end up paying less than $25,
right?
Because they retail for like $31.99.
Yeah, I was going to say right around 30 is where I've seen them on the reputable distributors' websites.
Yeah, generally $30 is the going cost for them, but sometimes authorized distributors will have sales, and North American Rescue does a good job of keeping all their distributors in check, making sure they're not pushing fake products and stuff like that. But if you're paying under $25, it's almost guaranteed you got yourself a knockoff.
And tourniquets don't go bad. So it's like buy once, cry once, because again, the likelihood you're going to need it is slim. They don't expire.
Exactly. But they can, eventually have service life issues depending on the conditions that they're stored in, right? If your Velcro becomes ineffective because it's full of lint and dirt and whatever, and you can't get it out, clean up that Velcro so that it's effective, that tourniquet's at the end of its service life. If you keep a tourniquet in your car and, 365 days a year, it sits in direct sunlight, over 100 degrees, the nylon straps are going to eventually succumb to those UV rays, and weaken over time. So if you store it correctly, in a pouch, or out of direct UV light, away from chemical solvents and stuff like that, they'll pretty much last indefinitely, for a single use item.
Right, it is a single use item. You don't want it back.
Yep, yeah, you don't want those back. But if you are in question about your tourniquet, I always suggest replace it.
Right, because it's not it's not a substantial cost at the end of the day.
No.
And if you're replacing it once every, let's say, 5 years, it's really not even worth discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. $30 over 5 years is pennies.
Right.
But you should inspect them on a regular basis, especially if they are exposed to certain environmental factors and things that might make them break down over time.
So I keep mine in a plastic pouch, which is then inside a plastic first aid kit, which is then inside of a nylon backpack. You think I'm storing it properly?
Yeah, you're fine.
Now, the only problem with that is the layers and the levels that I have to get through and defeat to get to the tourniquet. But like I said, I do actually have multiple in different places. But the one in my car, that's how it's actually staged.
Yeah, no. So the one that I have staged in my car, in my truck, is on the grab handle right in front of the steering wheel. that thing gets inspected every couple of months and generally gets replaced annually.
I would imagine you probably turn in the old ones into training tourniquets, or do you just toss them out so you don't get confused accidentally?
No, waste not, want not. Those get turned into trainers. So I dump them into my teaching stash, and we use them until they fail.
So let me ask you, if the average Joe citizen out there that is going to learn one medical skill, one life-saving medical skill, what should they focus on?
Are we talking about traumatic injuries or medical skills in general?
What if they're going to learn one skill that's going to help them the greatest in their life? Then what would that be?
CPR.
As far as medical goes, CPR. That's
CPR.
I figured you would say that, right? Because a heart attack, or your stop breathing, or those things are more common than a gunshot wound or something of that nature, or a compound fracture that is going to require a tourniquet. Those things, right? You got to plan for what's possible, but more so you've got to plan for what's probable, and those things are more probable.
Absolutely. Especially people with kids. Choking. Kids choke all the time.
Oh my God.
So a CPR class, at least it's supposed to, covers that, right? So you have to look at what your needs are, and while it may be cool to do those whiz bang, Ricky Rescue, tactical ninja stuff, you have to look what you actually need and what you're going to use more frequently.
You said you were American Heart Association CPR, was that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the difference, let's say, between AHA and Red Cross, and there's a few others out there? What's the difference? What makes the AHA better?
Very little.
Well, thank you for being honest.
Very little. It's just different organizations, different requirements for instructors. The Red Cross doesn't have options for medical providers, where the American Heart Association does have options for medical providers. So you're going to find the American Heart Association as the default for anybody that has any sort of medical requirements. And then you're going to find Red Cross CPR classes generally for people who have OSHA requirements.
Got it. Do you have any, have you seen or do you know anything about, I know that the USCCA is now offering, I think they've partnered with the AHA to offer CPR first aid classes. Do you have any information on that?
I don't have any information on that. I'm one of their affiliate instructors, but I don't do a whole lot of concealed carry classes, and I don't keep tabs on them regularly. I do know that U.S. Law Shield regularly does medical classes.
I did not know that.
U.S. Law Shield actually does a really good medical class.
That's interesting. That's definitely something I'm going to look at. I had no idea they were involved in any sort of training other than just their, legal protection.
Yeah, they actually had the people for U.S. Law Shield that wrote their first aid for gunshot wounds course is Dr. Rick Hamsfar, and then they've got Dwayne McBride, who's a paramedic and Marine Navy vet. So I've been through it, and they put out good information.
Good. Let's transition. Let's talk about the firearm stuff, because like you started off saying, that's what more people enjoy, right? I think we nailed that. Everybody should get a baseline of medical training to protect themselves and protect their family, just like, we carry guns, because we want to protect ourselves and protect our family. But obviously it's more fun, putting the holes in paper or shooting steel. So let's transition to talk about your firearm training. And I know you mentioned, handgun combatives with Dave Spalding, and Dave Spalding is a nationally recognized and respected firearm instructor. He's been on numerous TV shows, and he's retiring, is he not?
He is, and that was kind of the impetus between the for the Instructor Certification program that he did. So, and he's not fully retiring. He's just after next year, he's done with the traveling road show. He's pretty much only going to teach when he wants to, very specific classes. And generally, he's going to be sticking just to his home range with, one-day clinics and such. He wants to spend more time with his family. So,
sure.
A bunch of his alumni convinced him that his message was too good to go the way of the dodo, and convinced him to do a instructor certification course. Unlike Tom Givens with Rangemaster, who's in the business of making teachers, Dave isn't. So he picked, there's 20 of us total, 19 new students and his longtime AI Bucky, that for lack of better phrasing, we're going to take over his company when he goes. We're actually authorized to teach his curriculums, and you get handgun combative certificates when you complete the course, signed by Dave and myself or any of the other instructors. But there's only ever going to be 20 of us, and once us 20 are gone, that's it. We can't make more instructors authorized to teach his material. So,
wow, that's most people want to keep their legacy going. It seems like he wants to have his thumb on it, so to speak, and not in a bad way, but it seems like he wants to have his thumb on it.
He's very protective of his legacy. He's
Mm-hmm.
very protective of his legacy. He doesn't want his name being associated with dipshittery.
So he understands that it's going to get watered down as time goes on, as he passes it to you and you pass it to someone else and that person passes it to someone else. Eventually it's going to become something that it wasn't.
Absolutely. And he doesn't want that. And man, he actually keeps a very close watch on us. If we don't do something right, or we don't explain something right, or run a drill correctly, or we use the wrong size target, or set up a drill the wrong way, he's quick to call us out on it and remind us that at any moment, for any reason, he'll pull our instructor cert.
Wow.
So we have a very high standard to live up to.
It's a lot of thinking, right? I mean, you want to, obviously you want to get that information across to the student, and you also, now you're worrying about, does the student understand, and how can I articulate this so the student will understand? And then you're worrying about, is everybody being safe? Is anyone being unsafe? And now you're worrying at the same point in time about, I got to get my words right. And, oh, darn it, I'm out of, B-size targets. I have to use a C-size target. Will I lose my credential? That's a lot of stress.
Yeah. It's, you'll never lose the experience, but, you may lose, Dave may lose faith in you.
But at the same point in time, he's doing that for a reason, correct?
Yeah, exactly. He wants students of handgun combatives to be assured that they are getting the best product they can get, because he's poured his entire adult life into this.
Absolutely. He's been doing it for decades.
Absolutely. Because he was doing this long before he started the company. So.
And I think most very, very well-known firearm instructors don't just go out on their own one day and say, here I am. They've got some experience somewhere else, and then develop their own coursework and curriculum and maybe a few tweaks to the way people are doing things that, listen, as an employee, you've got to do things certain ways that your boss says that you might not always 100% agree with, but when you go out on your own, you can make those corrections and adjustments and improvements. We'll call them improvements, that make the style your own, so to speak.
Well, and the thing is, we're held to his standards when we are teaching a handgun combatives branded course,
because it's his name.
When we're using his name, it's his way or the highway. But we are free to take his material and his information and incorporate it how we see fit into our own programs. Because as long as you're, paying attribution, it's not theft, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So, me personally, when I'm running my grip and trigger clinics under Archetype of the Gun, I teach people to grip a very specific way that has significant aspects of Dave Spalding in there, but I don't use Dave's thumbs forward grip like a lot of instructors do. I mix, his style with a little bit of what I've gotten from other instructors that I work with, like Matt Jaques and Chuck Pressburg and all these people that are really about squeezing those little bits of performance out of you, making you as good as you can be and making you as consistent as you can be. There's no one right way to do things. There's more than one way to skin a cat. So I have to find something that works for my students. So if I have a student that doesn't like the thumbs forward, I'll show them a different way to get their gun, because I care about hits, So, but in Dave's class, nope, we run thumbs forward here. It's like if you go to a Tom Givens class, nope, you're not doing a slingshot inboard manipulation. You're doing a power stroke over the top.
Right.
You're with that instructor to learn their methods to do what they feel is best. So, give it a shot. It may not make sense to you now, or it may make sense to you later. You never know. You may switch guns, you may become injured, and all of a sudden that way makes sense.
I think my methodology is I want to give the student, again, there's no one-size-fits-all solutions when it comes to firearms. I want to give the student what works best for them, not what works best for me. I don't want to be, my personal approach is I don't want to be dogmatic in we do it this way.
Yep.
Now, of course, I'm going to show them the way I think is best. And we're going to talk and discuss and work through it. And if they, have any objections, we're going to have an adult conversation about why I think it's the best. And they're going to tell me why they think something else might be better. Or, I've had students who have had hand trauma. I'm not going to force them to do the thumbs forward, which is what I teach. If they've had hand trauma and it hurts them, it's uncomfortable.
Yep.
We're going to adjust that grip to something that is going to work for their body type, their body size, their firearm, whatever the specific is. We've got to find what works best for them.
And that's what we do. We give them our methods as a starting point. They have to retain that information that they're receiving, and then they have to make it their own. They have to make it so that they can perform it consistently and get the performance that they need. A lot of people out there in the industry are huge proponents of the crush grip, right? The higher you grip the gun, the better performance you're going to get. And yes, that is true for a lot of people. However, when you're teaching an 85-year-old,
right,
there's no way in hell that your average 85-year-old is going to be able to do a quality crush grip. All right. So we need to focus on techniques that allow them to still run the gun efficiently and control recoil, but aren't as heavily reliant on a significant amount of hand strength. Right. My partner here at the Shore Galleries Training Center, where we're located, Daniel Lombard, Devad Defense, he regularly will show people when he's doing his crush grip, man, he can deform the pistol grips on pretty much any polymer gun. And, I can as well, but if that's if your students aren't able to do that, you got to find something that works for them.
Right. Because the average person isn't going to have that hand strength. I'll tell you, for 21 years, I used to be in the roofing industry in one form or another, both working in the office as well as on the roof. And I got out of that. I think I sold my roofing company probably like 7 years ago. And then I dabbled in working for a few other companies in management, all the while doing my firearm training on the side. But let me tell you that I've noticed my hand strength significantly decrease since getting out of the roofing industry. Now I'm totally uninvolved whatsoever in roofing. I haven't been on a roof in quite some time, and I hope I never do ever see a roof again. But my grip strength has significantly decreased. It went from, like you said, being able to deform that grip without even thought, to last year I went out and bought myself a hand strengthening device, and I consulted with physical therapist who specializes in the hands.
Yep.
And we put together a training regimen for shooters to develop that
Yep.
hand strength, that grip strength, because it's important. Now, I think some people put too much emphasis on grip, and it's like, well, if you're, like you said, crushing it, then you don't need to worry about the other fundamentals. But I think they all 100% are like an recipe, right? For a good
Yep.
stew, you need every single one of the ingredients, and you can make it your own by adding a little more or a little less of each ingredient. But you've got to have all of the fundamentals put together, or it's not going to be a good stew.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You still need to have those essential skills, and you still need to do all of them to an extent. But the way I explain it in my grip and trigger clinics, all right, there's a good trigger press, which is smoothly depressing the trigger rearward without disturbing your sight. That would, easily be described as a clean trigger press, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have your grip. The tighter you hold the gun, the more slop you can get away with in your trigger. I mean, I can beat my triggers like a red-headed stepchild because my grip allows me to do that. However, the weaker your grip, the better your trigger prep and press have to be. Then you're starting. If you don't have your grip fully engaged, and you try to lock in your grip as you're pulling the trigger, you're going to drop your shots.
Right.
So if you're not able to manage that hand strength to secure the gun, a quality trigger press has higher weight to it. It's more of an essential skill.
And then let's go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No. You have to find that balance, and this is all about balance.
Balance, exactly. So I have seen, and I'm sure you've seen as well, someone who doesn't have a proper grip. They will actually often induce stovepipe malfunctions, and so that's a big issue in a defensive shooting situation, because even if you have a perfect trigger press, you've got to have some level of grip that the firearm recoil isn't going to be exaggerated and catch that round or prevent it from properly ejecting. And then you have a stovepipe malfunction that you have to deal with, and that just complicates things tremendously. So it's you can have a good trigger press, but you need the balance of also having a good grip.
Yeah, there's any number of ways that can go, but how the gun fits in your hand, how you have it aligned with, the bones in your wrist and your arm, so the gun is fully supported, right? It's a semi-automatic pistol. If there's nothing for the energy to push against, that slide won't reciprocate correctly at the correct speed, right? And some guns are more prone to those malfunctions than others.
Correct.
I like to, especially people who are asking about it, looking for the fanciest tool they can buy, right? I'll throw a fully done up agency arms gun with a compensator and match trigger and all that stuff in their hand, and they'll shoot it, and it'll go bang, click. Bang, click. Why isn't it working? Bang, click. Because you haven't established a consistent grip. You're not controlling the firearm. And if you don't manhandle that gun, it will malfunction every single time, right? The HK VP9 is a gun that I've noticed where if you don't hold it right and you don't support the gun correctly, it is more prone to malfunctions than, say, a M&P or a Glock, right?
Yeah, every firearm has its own intricacies.
Yep.
You have to understand how to shoot that firearm. They're all semi-automatic pistols, what you just named, but at the same point in time, they're all going to operate just a little bit differently, and you got to make sure that you understand how to operate your machine. Like a motorcycle,
Absolutely.
right? They're all basically the same, but they're all totally different as well.
You got 6 different Harleys that all are going to have different balance points. You got 6 different crotch rockets that are all going to have different balance points.
Right.
The principles are the same, but in order to become competent and confident with that tool, you need to understand how it works and how you need to operate it.
Yeah, you got to get trigger time to understand a particular firearm. And this is why Tell me if you agree. I absolutely can't stand when people talk about, well, I'm going to carry this and I'm going to carry that, and I've got 5 different carry guns, and sometimes it's a single action, sometimes it's a double action, sometimes it's a revolver, sometimes it's a DASA, and that drives me absolutely nuts because I think that first off, not people don't train enough, right? And if you're going to
Absolutely.
carry 2 guns, that means you have to train twice as much. But at the same point in time, you're defeating any sort of muscle memory because trigger presses are going to be different. Your levers and buttons and switches are going to be in different spots. I mean, take for example, like M&P or a Glock or XDM or any of those that have the magazine button, and then you get some of the HKs where you have that flappy magazine paddle.
Yep.
You're defeating muscle memory by flip flopping with different firearms. So it seems like you agree that probably best bet to stick to one platform or one similar platform where things are very, very much alike.
Absolutely. For your average end user, find a platform that you run well and stick with it.
Right.
Stick to that style. Carry rotations. Now, there's a caveat to this. Carry rotations for your average person are a terrible idea. Same reason why which tourniquet is easiest for you to put on? The Cat 7? Okay, stick with Cat 7. Right? Don't have 6 different types of tourniquets. Right? But at the same time, mission drives the gear train.
Sure.
Right? If I'm out on the beach in the bathing suit, I can't necessarily carry my full-size gun, but I sure as heck can stuff a J-frame revolver in my pocket or in a belly band under my waistband, in a Ziploc baggie and be fine. Right? If I'm going downtown Chicago and I'm doing a security detail down there, I'm not going to carry a single stack 1911. Right? The tools that you choose have to fit your mission parameters, right? They have to solve the problems that you need solved. So what works for law enforcement, what works for military, what works for Jim Bob down the street may not work for you.
Absolutely.
So you have to select your tools appropriately.
You see it on social media all the time. What's the best gun, or what gun should I get, and what do you think about this one versus this one? Someone asked the other day, like, of course, the argument, what's better, the 5.56 NATO or the 7.62 Russian, 7.62 AK round, and it's like, well, what for what? What are you trying to accomplish? What's the firearms are tools, right? And if I said to you, what's better, a wrench or a screwdriver, you're going to look at me like I'm nuts. Well, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to turn bolts, or are you trying to turn screws? Because you can't turn a screw with a wrench, and you can't turn a bolt with a screwdriver. So firearms are nothing more than tools, and like you said, it's a mission. You got it. What's the intended use of the tool?
Yeah, I'm not going to frame a house in with a ball peen hammer.
I mean, you could, but it would be incredibly inefficient.
Right. I can get in a gunfight with a 5-shot snub nose, but if I'm facing 3 or 4 bad guys, well, that's incredibly inefficient and ineffective.
I mean, even if you're facing one, and we've got video after video after video where guys are taking 8, 10, 11 shots and still they're still in the fight. You can hit them straight through the heart and they're walking dead, but they can do some damage to you before they drop 30, 40 seconds later.
Yep, they're dead. They just don't know it yet.
Exactly.
Absolutely. You have to understand. This is all about being well-rounded and having a solid understanding of what you need to do to accomplish the things that you need to accomplish. What's important right now, what's important, and who's next.
Right.
So
how many training classes do you do on average? A month, a year?
So actually, I just explained this to someone. So I'm doing 8 to 10 classes a month in whether it's clinics 1 days or 2 days, and I'm doing that pretty much 12 months a year now. I do 2 to 3 4-hour clinics a week. And then every other weekend, I'm generally trying to put up a 1-day class, a 2-day class, or multiple multiple clinics, whether they're medical courses or shooting courses. So I'm seeing on average between 80 and 120 people a month.
Wow.
So some months it's more, sometimes it's less. But I'm right around that there. So we're constantly working. This is a quickly, especially in this industry. I mean, I'm sorry, not industry, but in this environment, man, I'm spending 10, 12 hours a day at the shop right now, because, I'll do a 4-hour shooting clinic from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. in the evening. And I'll do private lessons from 10 a.m. up until 5 p.m. And I'll just be back-to-back student, all day, and it's, I could be busier if I wanted to, but my wife would probably divorce me.
Yeah, you got to spend a little bit of time at home. I know you're doing something you love, but you love her too.
Absolutely. It's all about balance.
Right. Everything's about balance. Life is balance.
Yep. So we've got a ton of offerings. I try to put up at least 2 medical classes a month. And I rotate the clinics to make sure that we're getting good coverage on all the clinics. And I guess I should explain what I consider a clinic. So with our clinics, what we do is we pick a skill or two, and we focus on that for 4 hours so that you can improve your overall performance. But those clinics generally are sections that have been broken down out of our larger courses. One of the things that I wanted to do with the clinics was get quality training available to people who couldn't afford or didn't have the time or financial stability to do take 4 days off and go travel and take a 2-day class to the tune of $2,000, $2,500, right? Our clinics run $125 for 4 hours. We've dropped our round count due to all the panic stuff going on, from 400 rounds down to about 250. So it is quality information in small blocks. You take all the blocks and you get a certificate at the end of it because you've essentially completed a 2-day course after you've taken 4 of them.
Right. You've done a 2-day course. You've just done it a half day at a time.
Yep, absolutely. Because not everybody can do the things that we do.
Yeah. Some people, like you said, I mean, time, money, listen, you may have all the money in the world, but when you're not working, you're watching your kids because your wife's working and you're balancing, when maybe you work nights and she works days or vice versa, so that the kids have constant care. And life happens and life gets in the way of, sometimes the things we want to do. So I have a similar approach where I break things up just the same as you, and it allows students to take as big or as little a bites as they want.
We do the same thing. Pardon me. We do the same thing with the medical courses, right? You can take our CREED class, Civilian Response to Everyday Emergencies. Depending on audience participation, it's an 8 to 10 hour class. American Heart Association CPR, American Heart Association First Aid, and TECC Active Bystander. Or you can take all 3 of those as individual classes.
Right, and that if you can't get a full day off, but you can get a half day off, or if you can't afford, $200-300, but you can afford $100, it's a baby bites.
Yep, absolutely. Got to get as much quality information out to the masses as we can.
And I think I think this episode, this podcast, talking about the medical, really helps accomplish that. At least I hope for the people listening, it's going to waken them up just to the idea that maybe they should go out and get just a little bit of medical training, for their everyday lives. I'm like you said, get the information out to the masses, and I hope that's what we're accomplishing right now, is at least planting that seed.
Yep, absolutely. If there's always something else to learn, there's always something else to improve on. And for me personally, a day where I don't learn something or don't do something to improve my current situation is a day wasted.
Sure.
You have to take breaks in there for, have those, those personal mental health days. Right. But at the same time, on mental health day, I'm going to be reading a book. I'm going to be out teaching my kids to do something, so it's all about, giving yourself better opportunities, better chances, and improving your overall situation.
It's like I said in a previous podcast, sharpening the knife. A butcher, he has to stop and sharpen his knife or it gets dull.
Yep.
We've all got to do the same thing. Even if you've trained and practiced a skill, occasionally you've got to stop and resharpen that knife. I think someone said iron sharpens iron. I've read, and there's a lot of truth to that. You surround yourself with people with similar thought processes, and you probably will be a much better person for it. So your buddies and your friends, get them involved in firearm training and get them involved in medical training and let them know, hey, I'm going to take this class. You want to come with me? And you're going to have more fun doing it probably.
Oh, absolutely. You're still there to learn, but then it kind of becomes a little bit of a social event too. You're doing it with people you enjoy spending time with.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, this has been an intriguing episode for me, and the fact that you have the medical experience that I don't have is part of the reason I wanted to talk to you and have you on the show, because you can speak to things that I just don't have the experience. We're not all good at all things, and a wise person will recognize their strengths and their weaknesses. And like I said, you've got the experience I don't have. You've got the strength in that department, and I appreciate that you were willing to come on and talk to my listeners and now your listeners as well, and explain those things.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
How can someone get a hold of you that wants to learn more about your training classes?
So you can find me on Facebook, Archetype of the Gun.
Spell that.
You can find. I did a terrible choice in picking a name there, right? Archetype, ARCHETYPE of the Gun, and then you can also find me at archetypeofthegun.com. I'm on Firearms Training Hub and Instagram under the same thing, Archetype of the Gun. I'm all over the place, though. My social media presence is not as good as it should be, because I'm always focused on teaching and not focused on taking pictures.
Yeah, right. I got the same problem. I'm like, I need my daughter to come to class and just follow me around with a camera.
Right.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you very much. You've been an excellent guest, and your information was awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Tom.
So I want to thank everybody for listening. Again, Erik, thank you for being on the show. Everybody stay tuned for future podcasts. If you've got an idea that you want to share with me for a podcast, if you'd like to be a guest, hit me up at alphakoncepts.com/podcast. If you'd like to be a sponsor of this show, go ahead and contact Fire and Iron Media, or just fill out the contact form at alphakoncepts.com/podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. Tell your friends about this podcast. We're really starting to grow, and I appreciate all of you listeners. As always, everybody, be armed, be trained, and be alpha.